It's hard to believe this is my third show today. You're live. This is Real Talk with Mary Grace, and it is the 5th of April, 2022. We are streaming on a number of platforms right now. Please say hello as you come in. Please share this, tag people, put it into groups. We have an important show tonight. This is a special report with Michael Yon. He is reporting to us live from the border in Texas. He is down there doing recon. I think he's going to go deeper in country, but he will let us know about that on the show. Michael Yon is a combat correspondent. He served in the special forces. He is a seasoned veteran photographer, writer. He has a blog over on Locals. It's michaelyon.locals.com. I'm going to let him give us a little introduction here as everybody's coming in. Michael, thank you for coming back on the show. It's great to have you back, and just wonderful to see you again. Just take it away. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to come on, Mary Grace, and thank you for being patient. I'm in McAllen, Texas, and out my window, not far away, is the border. I came back to my hotel so we can talk. It's hard to do it on the border. It's actually quite windy right now. I'm looking outside the window, but the migrants are just flooding in like crazy now. As you know, Title 42 has been dropped. It's not supposed to officially be dropped until May 23rd, but effectively it's finished.
Can you
Title
explain that?
42.
Yeah, go
Title
ahead.
42 was the provision that allowed Border Patrol to take migrants back and just catch them and release, basically take them, put them back into Mexico. And so they were doing that in large numbers, right? Still, many were getting through. Most were probably getting through. I saw many of those, but now it's just it's unbelievable. I mean, it's like a surge, a tide that's just running over everything. And it's going to get worse because the word is out, and people are coming in. For instance, the Cubans who previously would go, especially through Suriname and South America, and then they would go through Brazil and Peru, and finally up into or Bolivia, and then into Colombia, and finally through the Darien Gap, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and keep going north, Guatemala. So they're in Mexico, and then they would get here. But now they've opened up a new route. Todd Bensman's been talking about it. I talked with him this morning. Todd is a very serious individual that I've been to Mexico with, and Texas and other places tracking migrants. Mm-hmm. And they've opened the Cubans have opened a new route, an easier route to start to Nicaragua, right? And that route from Nicaragua is an easy shot at that point. It's just buses and mostly buses, right? And then they just come right over the border. And they're not economic migrants. They've got the communist utopia that they need, that everybody fought so hard, bravely for, just as the Venezuelans do. They've got their socialist utopia, but of course it's collapsed and everybody's leaving. But it's not. It's not also. They're not running from a fire, right? They're running because we're throwing corn out. And if you want to draw the ducks, you throw corn out. And we are opening our borders, even in the midst of a food crisis that is going to hit us very hard. As you know, I've been warning about this since January of 2020, more than 2 years. So all of these things that I've been warning about since January 2020 are now coming to pass. Bottom line, here on the border, all across the border, all the way out to Tijuana, in California at the San Diego border, we got Ukrainians crossing over there in large numbers. We've got, people from 80 to 100 countries crossing daily, including people from Hezbollah who've been caught and all sorts of other groups. So, yeah, they're coming in. Our government is facilitating it. They're not doing anything to thwart it. In fact, the opposite. In the middle of, as you know, I'm a war correspondent, so I study things like famines, pandemic, migration. I spent all last year in countries like Colombia, Panama, Mexico, United States, Morocco, Greece, Bulgaria, Lithuania, all tracking migrants, right? Because migration is part of warfare, right? And it either leads to it or is a result of it often, as is famine and pandemic and war. They all are part of the same constellation of human behaviors, right? And so what we've got now with the food supply crashing around the world, first in Africa, in a big way. First in Africa, we see it happening in Sri Lanka right now as well, which is obviously not Africa. I've been to Sri Lanka. They should have all the food in the world, but they don't now, due to some agricultural issues, which are of great interest in and of themselves. That's a side topic, which is key, though. We have people like Gates over there pushing to make them organic farmers, which has failed, and now they have not enough food. So the master plan has failed in Sri Lanka, and so now there's riots in the street. Of course, they need to get food, and people will do anything for food. It only takes how does that go? 9 meals to anarchy. I would argue it's probably more like 3 to 4.
Like
And so,
New York City, 3 days without food. New York City.
well, I mean, when people have no food versus resupply, those are two different things. When somebody runs out of food in their pantry, they're gonna hit the streets. They're gonna
Mm.
start looking for it, right? And that's going to generally happen in the same day with most people, right? And most of the people seem to have only a few. For most people, their idea of a huge food pantry seems to be like, I have 8 days, right? I mean, that's for most people. What we're looking at here is something that's going to last much longer, at least 2, 3, 4 years. We don't know, but I would say 2 years minimum. We're going to be into some really rough times, and this is going to create massive migrations, right? And for instance, from Africa, most of their grain and other supplies come from countries like Ukraine, right? And other inputs as well, fertilizer, fuel from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, all of the inputs as well as food itself. For instance, Lebanon got almost all of its grain from Ukraine. And then Lebanon, in August of last year, they cleverly were storing ammonium nitrate downtown in Beirut, which exploded, and then destroyed their grain storage. Right, so they don't have the normal grain storage that they don't. So now Lebanon is in trouble. Of course, it's a small country, but this is all additive. And then when the Ukraine war started, suddenly Lebanon is in dire straits, as is Syria, of course, from the war. Remember, the Arab Spring started with famine, right? That famine led to extreme violence. Famine often leads to revolutions and that sort of thing. And so, what we're looking at now in Africa, across Africa, is an unknown number of wars breaking out, huge amounts of migrations, both internally and externally, to places like Europe and the United States. So we're looking, at a lot of very serious situations. In addition to, of course, Ukrainians moving out, and it's a very serious situation. And so, that's why I'm constantly on the ground checking things out. I've spent a lot of time last year in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California, watching the border, and down in Mexico, all the way down to Tapachula, by the way. Tapachula is the southernmost city in Mexico, in Chiapas state. It borders Guatemala. And on the border of Guatemala, there's a river, sort of like the Rio Grande, but it's a different river. And it's like their Rio Grande. And that's where migrants come across. If the water is low, they'll just walk across. It can be like ankle deep. Other times, like when I was there last year, they had to pole across on inner tubes, and they used the pallets on the inner tubes, the inner tube pallet trick. And so we
Wow.
have huge numbers of migrants coming over like that, day and night. And then they're rioting down. You can see Oscar Blue has done a great job down there of covering the riots caused by the migrants in Tapachula. When I was in Tapachula, I don't speak Spanish, but I can understand well enough to read some of the headlines. For instance, there was a headline in the newspaper at a newsstand in Tapachula that said something about, the migrants who are criminals in their own countries are here in Tapachula now, right? So a lot of criminality is unfolding. We see in Venezuela, for instance, just released huge amount of prisoners from the prisons. And these sorts of things, they're coming to us, right? And we also see serious problems in Colombia, Peru, many countries that can, as Brazil, which is quite huge, of course. Many
Yeah.
countries are on the edge, and they can end up marching straight through Panama right to the United States. It's an easy shot.
So this is something President Trump talked about from the very first day of his candidacy in 2015, and he was immediately branded a racist. The famous statement, "They're not sending us their best." I knew this to be true because I was living in Hawaii at the time, and it was during I moved to Hawaii at the time of the economic crisis, right when Obama got elected, and the homelessness increased exponentially there because basically states around the country were emptying their jails and giving people one-way tickets to Hawaii, and they were living on the streets. And then, of course, families were becoming homeless, and the crime, it was just it was through the roof. You couldn't even leave a pair of shoes on the beach because it would get stolen. And so I knew exactly what he was talking about. And it seems like he tackled the problem to a large degree as much as he could. He fought Congress tooth and nail. He finally got funding for the wall through the military budget, and so it stemmed the tide. From what you're saying, the outpouring of migrants has actually been exponentially increased through a number of factors, that it's just this perfect storm: war, famine, the resident in the Oval Office or the fake Oval Office right now. All of that has combined to create this just unbelievable storm of migration, and the fact that we're handing out freebies. That's what you're saying here. Now, let me ask you one more question. Sam Faddis was on the show the other night, and he talked about these beacons that they have out in the desert for migrants, where they can actually contact is it like an emergency phone where they can contact Border Patrol? Border Patrol will come and rescue them, and then they actually help them into the country. They take them to shelter because it's the humanitarian thing to do. But that these migrants are being coached, and they're being given phones. They're being given everything they need to penetrate into the United States, and they're being given incentive. What's going on here?
The beacons are real. I mean, I've seen beacons. Yeah, they exist. And also, Ben Berkwam.
Yeah.
Ben.
Mhm.
You know him from you've met him. And
Yeah,
Ben, what was it, about 10 days ago? He and his crew were taken at gunpoint by Customs and Border Patrol, right? And
that's
where
right.
was that? In Arizona, right? And they have it on film. Meanwhile, there was about 60 migrants just near them that were unsearched. So they went for the journalist, Ben and his crew,
That's
and
right.
held them at
He
gunpoint.
had he had the migrants on video. He was showing, "Here are the
That's
migrants.
right.
Here are the ones who've been detained." What why? How is that happening? I mean,
I
these are
can't read their mind, but I can't read their mind. But when I was on the border today, Customs and Border Patrol, some are very professional, some are open, others are suspicious of anybody with a camera for whatever reason. And the Texas National Guard, on the whole, is no better. Keep in mind, I was a former soldier and also an extremely experienced war correspondent. I don't know anybody alive who has more combat experience as a combat correspondent than I have. I've been out with soldiers a lot, right? And I know good soldiers from bad soldiers. I know high morale from low. I don't need 2 days to figure it out. I can figure it out in 5 minutes. When I'm out here watching Texas National Guard on the border, they need to be relieved. They need to be taken off. Somebody else needs to be down there. But our military in general also is in terrible condition. It's not what I would call a deployable military at this point. Our border is wide open, and there's really nobody there to protect it. The people that the Border Patrol are not, even if they wanted to, and I think many of them do. I think many Border Patrol are very patriotic Americans, and I think many of the Texas National Guard are as well. But as
Mhm.
a unit, as a state, as a Texas National Guard, they are incapable of protecting the state. I've heard Texans say, a friend recently, old CIA friend, moved to Texas and said, Texas will take care of itself. And I said, no, one. Listen, if I'm coming to your state as a war correspondent to cover what's happening in your state, you're not in a good place, right? If I'm in your neighborhood doing my job, that's not a good sign at all. And I'm in
Mm.
Texas, right? This place is being overrun, right? And there's no question about it. Now, today, running around out in Roma, Texas, and other places, here in McAllen, Brownsville, all these different places, there's all these, pawn shops everywhere. payday loans, quick check card, check cashing places, all sorts of, this place is economically depressed, right? Meanwhile, we're just flooding in migrants who don't have anything at
Yeah,
all, right?
yeah.
And so we're bringing them in not by the thousands, not by the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, by the millions, right when we're going into a food crisis. This is no drill. We're going to go into a civil war. I've spent years in wars: Iraq, Afghanistan, Nepal, heavy fighting in Thailand, uh, Philippines, quite a few out in Myanmar with the guerrillas. I've been in a lot of wars, right? This is like my office. And I can clearly see that we're heading into civil war in the United States.
What
And
does
if
that
we end up,
what does
if
that
we end up with, well, a civil war can have many faces. No two are alike. They're like snowflakes, right? And I don't mean snowflakes that work in Starbucks. I mean, they're like snowflakes. No two are alike, right? And,
mm,
I've been in over 80 countries, and no two countries are alike. No two people are alike. No two civil wars are alike. But there is obviously a lot of racial strife in the United States, and a huge amount of it is manufactured. There is a lot of gimme, gimme, gimme in the United States, that, people feel that they have the right to anything that somebody of our race owes everybody, right? Even though many people of our race are Ukrainians coming across the border right now. They've never stepped foot in the United States, but their whiteness will make them guilty and owe something to somebody else with a different carpet skin color, right? Like the little swatch, you're out swatches,
uh,
oh, and your swatch owes my swatch, right? And so now we're going to have food shortages. That's clear. Many people can't see. Another intelligence friend of mine, just talking with this morning and yesterday. I don't know what it is with some of these intelligence people. People like Sam Faddis, he's a friend of mine, retired CIA. You know him. You just interviewed him. He's straight on target. He sees it very clear, right? He's a serious action guy. He was a former Army officer. He has lived on the cutting edge. He knows what he's seeing. But some of the other ones, they just can't see it. A friend of mine, again, career intelligence person, last night and this morning is saying, and I said, how are you doing on your stocking and this sorts of thing? And she's saying, do I need to stock up? Or what are you talking about? I said, the food crisis. And she's like, what food crisis? I buy at local markets. Nobody, I don't have to shop in this. Okay. Okay. And you're an intelligence analyst. Right. You can't even make up this stuff. I mean, so the bottom line is, we're going into a food crisis. I don't care if you shop at the Amish market, right? It doesn't matter. The food crisis will cause all prices to rise significantly. So when it's available, the prices are going to go through the roof unless you're growing it yourself, right? And even then, the prices will increase due to inputs like fuel. Fuel is always a base, one of the inputs. Fertilizer, if you're using it, herbicides, pesticides, all those are going through the roof. You can use them or you don't have to use them. But bottom line is, the tide is coming in. All boats are going to rise. And while we're bringing in millions of people, most of whom don't even speak our language.
right, right, that yeah. Do you know about what's going on, with our farmers? Because I have some friends who follow the homesteader movement, and one of the things that I'm hearing is that they're actually being, in some cases, the government is trying to prevent them from growing their own food. Out in Oregon, they're trying to pass a law that farmers can't farm. They can't farm animals. Do you have are you aware of that? Are you familiar with that situation? That they're actually, I've heard a couple things that small farmers are being prevented from farming, that either regulations, are coming against them, but also that bigger farmers are actually being paid not to produce or to destroy their yield. Are you aware of
Right.
any of that?
It's right out in the open. Approximately 25 million acres this year won't be planted, and people will be paid not to plant it. About 25 million, you can find it online, right? This is easy. A lot of it's been going on for years, but now this year it's the highest ever. And also, for instance, the avian flu, right? Is
Yeah.
it even real? We don't. Nobody with a brain on a head on their shoulders actually believes the FDA anymore. No, or the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We don't believe them either. We don't believe any of them anymore after what's just happened in the last 2 years. They
Yeah.
have negative credibility. They're not even zero. They're at a we expect that they will be wrong due to incompetence, or they'll just lie. That's what we expect, because that's what we get, right?
Mhm.
If they happen to tell the truth, it's probably by accident, or it just happens to be the convenient thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Uh, now they, now we've got the avian flu H5N1. That is it even real? I mean, so for instance, over in the UK, can't have free range chickens anymore, that sort of thing. They're
Mhm.
killing millions of chickens in the United States.
Yeah.
Now, is it real or is it not real? I don't know. What next? The swine flu, what next?
Mhm.
BSE, the BSE, we're going to have the cows start to be destroyed. I mean, we're
Yeah.
clearly for instance, during the pandemic lockdowns, notice you can buy all the alcohol that you want, but you can't go to church and you can't buy seeds. You can't buy seeds,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
okay, now in Montana recently, about what, 2 weeks ago or so, you can find it online. They're warning about planting your own seeds, right? I mean, it's coming. They don't want people to have victory gardens
Yeah.
as we had in World War II. They
Yeah.
don't want self-sufficiency. Look, control the fuel, control the country, control the food, control the people, right? This is, and they're clearly the beast. I call it the beast. It's some amalgam of forces for instance, the World Economic Forum, there's some amalgam of forces that is trying to take all of our power away, like in the Holodomor, in the famines in Ukraine under Stalin, killed millions of people. Nobody even knows how many, in a successful attempt to take their farmland from all the small people and give it to the communist overmasters, right? Which they did. China did the same thing under Mao, or very similar. Famines, huge famines. Nobody throws a famine like communists, whether that's Chinese or Russian or whomever. So I mean, and so it's clear that they're trying to make us dependent on the government or the
Yeah.
corporations. I
Yeah.
mean, above the corporations are now, above the governments now are corporations, right? And so the corporations have become massive, and massively powerful and enabled, whether that be through information warfare or capacity from the data collection that goes on with all these phones and things that we have, all the social media and whatnot that we're doing now. Everything, of course, is being collected, and this can all be used with AI to control people, right? Rape of the mind type stuff
Yeah.
meets AI. Rape of the mind
Mhm.
meets artificial intelligence, right? I mean, this is a epic
Yeah.
situation that we're in. Clearly, there's a bold move to control us through food, right? And that's why people that have prepped for years, such as I have always been ready for. I mean, if we have 3 months of no food, that's no problem for me. I won't miss it. It's no problem. But
Yeah.
most people can't do 3 days, right? So people like us would be called hoarders or preppers when we're not. We're preppers, yes, but if you've stocked up in advance, you're not a hoarder. You're somebody who's just, in fact, we're not part of the problem. We're part of the solution, because
They're like
when
homestead.
devastation occurs,
Yeah.
we're not competing for those things the beans that everybody's trying to fight for. We're not
Right.
even there. We're not even in the line.
You
We're
actually,
watching it from the hilltop,
yeah, you
right?
become a resource for your family.
Right.
And somebody said in the chat here that their feed store is saying they can't get seeds, and so she's been buying seeds and putting them in the freezer. Another person is asking Michael. They said we were initially told to be prepared for 2 to 4 weeks. That's not what you told me recently. What are you saying now? What are you recommending, and what would you do for your family in terms of preparation for what you see coming? And let's just be clear: we're talking about scarcity as well as just rampant inflation. And anybody who's been to the grocery store lately will see. I was just there yesterday with my dad, and a healthy loaf of bread, that's supposedly organic or whatever, it's $6. $6 for a loaf of bread. That's a treat. That's like buying a cake or sweets or something special. The bread of life should not be $6 a loaf to feed your family. Um, But what are you recommending in terms of the timing, what people should reasonably be prepared for so that they're not under the control of any government or any entity that is trying to force them into a subservience?
Well, as you know, everybody's circumstance is different. For somebody who lives in Hawaii versus Alaska versus Key West and Manhattan, Boston, it's all different, right? Everybody has different geographic situations, health situations, age, children, uh, you know, uh, uh, resources. Some people are swimming in money and it's no problem. And some people have a problem. They have to dig in the couch to fill up the gas tank these days, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you have the capacity, I don't know who said 2 to 4 weeks, and I don't know where that comes from and in regard to what. But when it comes to food, I've been saying privately to people since January 2020, 2 years, 2 years. Now, I've been saying that since January 2020. If you prepared way back then, you did it at a fire sale price. If you do it now, it's far more expensive, but it's a lot cheaper than it will be even a month from now, right? Everything that you buy today is on sale, right? And why do I say 2 years? Most famines don't go more than 2 years. I'm not saying that there's going to be people starving to death in the United States. There could be. I mean, let's be realistic. It actually can happen, and it's not an insignificant chance. But there will be people starving to death in Africa this year. That's pretty doggone clear. And next year will probably be far worse. And many of the supply chain issues that are happening, okay, we've got different issues here. We've got input issues, for instance, with fuel, fertilizers, and that sort of thing. We have production issues, for instance, in Ukraine war right now, the most productive farmland, and Ukraine is a very important country for food exports. The most productive farmland happens to be a combat zone. So that's not going to be planted this year. Most of it's not going to even be planted. And even if it was planted, it's not going to get on ships probably and go out, right? Right now, Russia is threatening to supply food only to its friends. At any moment now, Putin could cut off fuel to Europe. If Putin shuts off fuel to Europe, which he can do like that,
yeah,
and I think that he probably will, but we'll see. But if he shuts off fuel to Europe, he's putting now Europe, all the farms that are in Europe, they need to be planting now as well, right? And all these things require fuel inputs, right? And
mhm,
and their industry will collapse. So I mean, we can see the biggest white people famine that we've seen in a long time, right? I
mhm,
mean, a real famine with
yeah, yeah,
starving to death people, cannibalism type stuff. It's a real potential. This is not far fetched any longer, right? And we're right on the edge. We've burned through most of our fat, most of the resiliency. We've just burned through it in one way or another, and so now we're coming down to what comes next. If Putin were to shut off fuel to Europe, he's looks like he may shut off the food that whatever he's still sending there. This puts Europe and other countries like Japan. Everybody else is bidding for the same food, right? So it's going to cause everybody's prices to explode in the middle of monetary inflation, while fuel prices are skyrocketing. Of course, we're tapping into the strategic fuel reserve now, and that's not bottomless, right? And we're only tapping into a small portion of it anyway. But not to go off into that tangent. Bottom line is, if you have the resources, and only your resources, your geographical situation, and your health, and all these things, I would say 2 years is a working. If you've got the budget and all that, 2 years, and do it now. And I don't mean like 2 months from now. I'm talking when this interview is over, you do it, and stock up on and remember the things that make you happy. Some people are just like, I'll get 2 years of rice and beans. Look, you'll be killing the neighbor's cats and dogs if you're just eating rice and beans for a couple months. I mean, get things that make you happy, right? Not like army rations, 2 years of army rations. Trust me, I've eaten a lot of those. You'll be killing the neighbor's cats and dogs, right? Get things that make you happy. Don't forget the salts and the peppers and the spices, and because we're talking about we're going through a phase change in the whole structure of our lives. And I've been saying this since January of 2020. 2019 is dead. It's finished. It's never coming back. I've been saying that since January of 2020. It's not going back. And then, as I was saying, 2021, I don't know what's going to happen. Now we know, if you can remember 2021. And now we're in 2022. And I'm telling you, by the end of this year, there's going to be significant famines. It's very clear in Africa, specifically, and in parts of Asia, at least, right? And in 2023, 2024, the sky is the limit. And so you'll either be prepared or you won't be prepared. And if you're not prepared, you're going to be part of the problem and one of the people out there, because as soon as you get hungry, your brain's going to change and you're going to do things that you didn't think that you would ever do. You'll be breaking into things. You'll be the person that's never double parked in your whole life and never sped or never got a speeding ticket, and you'll be robbing your neighbor, right? So prepare right now.
I'm just looking at the chat right here. I've got, yeah. So, okay, I'm reading the room here. So, one of the things that I want to be mindful of is, there's a fine line between being afraid and being prepared. All right, everybody has to decide for themselves how you're going to digest this news. I'm here to give a voice. I'm here to open up the conversation for people to be able to at least know what they're seeing. It's up to you to decide. For somebody in my chat to call Michael a loon, you probably haven't walked in his shoes. So bye bye.
Yeah, a lot of people, yeah, tell them to get lost. I don't care. Go
Yeah,
jump out of a window.
yeah,
Listen, a lot of people will say I'm afraid, and I will say very clearly, I've done more combat than probably anybody you will ever meet in your life, and I will do it in the future. I don't scare easily. I've seen people with their faces blown off right beside me, and I go straight back to combat. I am not afraid. I am prepared, and I know what's coming. And you people, the ones who are out there going, well, it's not going to happen. Well, then have fun. And if you break into my house, it's going to be a bad day, right? Prepare. There's a lot of people like me who are going to be prepared. We know what's coming. We've seen it before, over and over and over in all these wars I've been in. I know what's coming, and I know how you're going to behave. The jackasses that talk and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you're afraid. No, I'm not, sport. I'm ready to roll. I'm going back to Darien Gap next week. You know Darien Gap? One of the most dangerous jungles in the world. I'll be in it next week. Probably, what's the date today? I'll be in it in about 7 days from now. And you know what? About 10% of the migrants who go through there die. I spent 4 months in there last year. I'm not afraid. Bottom line is I'm prepared because I know what's happening. I wear my seatbelt. I wear a helmet when I go to combat. Getting shot in the head's not a fun day, right? But at the end of the day, if you're not prepared, you're in for trouble. And if you want to call people loons, have a nice day, because I think the same of you. In fact, but I know it's true. You think it's true, but I know it's true.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a sobering conversation, guys. Earlier today I came on the show and I told people, I just said, it's time to wake up. The things that you've been hearing about what's been going on in our country. Now, I have hope. I have hope that it can turn around. I'm not pie in the sky. I've seen God turn around situations that we thought were hopeless, historically, situations that should have ended in complete and total disaster. And I believe in prayer. Many of my listeners believe in prayer. We are going to pray that this is not going to end up the way that all of the physical signs say that it should. Because if we know the story of Joshua and Caleb, they went into the promised land with the 12 spies, and the 10 of the spies came back and said, these people in this land are grasshoppers. They're bigger than we are. We're like grasshoppers compared to them. Sorry, they're giants, and we have no fighting chance. Right now, we're looking at a giant. I mean, that's very clear. We're looking at a Goliath, and yet, I have the faith. I have the faith that our God can turn this around, and I'm calling on every single person listening right now. You have a choice. You have a choice to be paralyzed by fear, or you have a choice to intercede in faith and to stand on the word of God and the truth of what we know historically God could do. Does that mean you put your head in the sand and you say, "La, la, 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 I'm not listening to this person." No, every single person has to make a decision based on your own ability and your own level of faith. How much am I gonna go and purchase? How much am I gonna can? How much am I going um, to put in the freezer? How many seeds am I gonna buy? This is your decision, and, you know, some of you are actually called to prepare extra. And if you have the resources, if you have the finances, if you have the land, you might God might actually be telling you to plant extra. God might be telling you to buy extra and put it away for family members and church members that you know, who may not have enough. That may be your calling. And so I do want people to take this seriously. This is not meant to make you afraid. You know, my motto is be prepared. Don't be scared, be prepared. And that is one of the reasons that I've stocked up. You know, I have my elderly father here. I have to make sure he's okay. And you know, like those of us who are kind of more mobile, it's easy to kind of fend for yourself. But you guys have families. You have people that it's important to take care of. So I just want to urge you to really take this seriously and walk in faith. You can do both at the same time. God alerted Joseph to famine coming. And it was 7 years that he stocked up for. He stocked up for a 7-year famine. His family, who threw him in a well, came begging and needing food, and he was the one that was able to supply it for them. So you have to take this in prayer, and you have to understand and hear from God the seriousness of what it is that you're being called to do. That's my
Notice, let me say something on that. Notice I'm not selling anything, Mary Grace. On my website, michaelyon.com, there is no advertisement. I'm not selling any survival food. I'm not selling any training. I've never have. In all the years I've done this, I've never put a single, there's nothing for sale. There's no like, here's a
yeah,
shovel for the storm. Nope. I'm just giving you accurate information, and I'm known for accurate information. I've been known for it for years. That's why I have so many readers. Is because the things that I say, I study like Rain Man 7 days a week. As you saw me traveling across the country with the truckers, gathering information, finger on the pulse, what's going on.
yeah,
Just again was down in Florida doing the same thing. Now I'm in Texas, back to Panama soon. My fingers on the pulse. I'm on constant global recon, and I'm glad that you keep going back to the Bible. The Bible is old wisdom. The only reason the Bible survives so long is because it withstands a test of time, right? Like the four horsemen. Of course, there's some argument about what the various horsemen are. Like the first horse, the white horse is that pestilence or the antichrist or whatever. If we choose to go with pestilence, we've just had that with a more or less fake pandemic. And the second one, of course, is war, the red horse, right? And here we go. And the third one, the black horse, famine, right? I mean, and these things go together. Pan for war, pandemic, famine, war, and
mhm,
they always go together. If you get a big pandemic, you will get a war and you will get a famine. If you get a big famine, you'll get a big war and you'll get various pandemics. These all feed into each other. If you get, it's three musketeers. If you get one, you get the other two. One for all for one, right? And then of course
highway.
death, right? It
Yeah,
and then what you'll get from these also is massive migrations. Again, that's why I spent all last year in Colombia, Panama, Mexico, all over the United States, Morocco, Greece, Bulgaria, Lithuania, tracking migration, right? Because all these things go together. Warfare, the simple war stuff, going out and getting into shootouts and watching rockets fly around and that sort of thing, scary stuff, people getting killed. That's the simple level of warfare. Bigger than this, you've got famines, pandemics. The PhD level is information war, right? Information warfare. And that's one thing that many of our enemies are quite good at. There's not just one information war going on. There's multiple information wars going on, for instance, from CCP, Russia, of course, our own government,
yeah,
corporations. You got Facebook or Twitter cutting people's, feeds like yours. Your feed doesn't feed out as well as it could because, you're saying things that are not popular with the beast, right?
yeah,
But the bottom line is It's clearly coming. The people that most of the people now that still don't see it, they're about to get clonked on the head. I don't know how they didn't notice how these prices have just skyrocketed. Unless their parents are buying their food for them, I'm not sure how they've noticed this.
Yeah.
I've not noticed it. Not noticed it.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to put it in practical terms, stock up to the extent that you can. Uh, he's not telling you to go spend money that you don't have, obviously. If you can grow food, grow food. If you can
Yeah.
buy extra on every grocery trip. If you're somebody that's going through Starbucks every day, cut it out of
Stop.
your budget, put that money into extra food. You guys know that I have superfoods on my channel. I will put that link up for you because I believe that it's a good investment. Nutrient per dollar is a fantastic investment. I have stocked up on superfoods myself, and I know a lot of people who have because it's shelf stable. Is that all I want to eat for the rest of for 2 years? No, not necessarily. I my dad and I just cut up a whole bunch of steaks and put them in the freezer. Everybody has to make a decision about how you're going to do that. But Michael's right. And the other thing somebody said in the chat here was stock up on medications. If you have a medication that you cannot live without, again, and this is another thing I just want to encourage people to have faith because the truth of it is all through the Bible there are people who have been in dire situations where God provided for them miraculously. And we still see that today. I mean, people in these developing countries and third world countries are alive because of the miracles of God. The widow in who took care of the widow who was I'm sorry, I'm getting my books of the Bible mixed up. The one that had she had a little bit of oil and a little bit of wheat, and the prophet came to see her, and he asked her to make him some food, and she literally made the food with the very last bit of provision that she had, and then from that day on, she never ran out. And so, God is the God of miracles. And I don't ever want people to forget that because we don't want to live from a place of scarcity and lack. We live from a place of abundance. And I'm optimistic. I am optimistic that this is going to turn around, that God's going to turn it around, and that the people that are faithful to him are going to be the ones who have not only abundance, the people who are faithful and who are being prepared are going to have not only abundance, but that they're going to be able to share with others. Now, those of you who are not getting prepared, who are not putting oil in your lamps, think twice because there's the 10 virgins who were told to put oil in their lamps. 5 of them did, 5 of them didn't. And when the bridegroom came, the ones without the oil weren't invited to the feast. So just remember that because being a sluggard and just relying on everyone else to take care of you, that's not godly. That's not biblical. So we want to take this seriously, not live in fear, believe in the God of miracles, believe in his miraculous provision. And if you're being called to give because out of the abundance that you're giving, God will return it to you multiplied. I do believe that. I've seen it happen with friends of mine even now. I've seen them giving and God multiplies it and returns it tenfold. So let's always remember that God's economy is different from what we're seeing with our own eyes. Michael, I want to switch topics here just a little bit. You were with the convoy. You were with the People's Convoy, and we talked a little bit last time you came on the show. The connection wasn't great when you came on, so I want to go back to this topic. You traveled with the People's Convoy all the way across America. A lot of people don't really understand the purpose of that. They still don't really understand why the convoy took place. How significant is it that we have American truckers organizing across the country for weeks at a time? What's going on with that? And why did you, as a combat correspondent, choose to join that convoy?
Well, I'm looking at the bigger picture. In the bigger picture right now is the economy, of course. food supply and other goods as well, not just food, of course, medicines, everything else that needs to get to market. And obviously, within the United States, most things go by truck, right? Almost everything actually goes by truck, ultimately, right? And right now, the truckers, many of them, will not take the untested quote unquote vaccines that are killing so many people. They won't take them. I won't take them. And they're resisting these sorts of things. And of course, we've seen that happen in Canada. The idea came from the Canadians. You'll recall all the many Canadian flags, a lot of gratitude from Americans and American truckers towards Canadians for coming up with the idea of the trucker convoy in Canada, which then spread to the United States. And we saw from between California and Maryland. Oh Lord, you saw it. How many people on those bridges? I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was people lining the roads and on the bridges and honking horns and just showing a lot of support. It was a massive turnout, and that's just along one artery from so that's a tiny part of America that was even able to turn out, but it was massive. So we can see that the groundswell is there in support of taking back our freedoms. You never ask for freedom. If you're asking for freedom, you're just a slave. And I mean just a slave, right? You don't ask for freedom, you take it. You take it by whatever means are necessary. You don't sit here and go, well, can we have our freedom now? No, we're taking it. And the truckers are ready to take it. They're willing to. They haven't done it yet, but they may do it at some point. Just stay home and not truck foods out. Now, what would happen? Of course, the food and that sort of thing would just run out. Some truckers, of course, would deliver, but it would not be enough. If enough truckers stopped doing it, this could cause, of course, state governments, county governments, city governments, and the federal government. I mean, you could see governments overthrown. This typically happens when there's famines. I mean, the king often doesn't survive the famine, right? Or a pandemic, because these things all entwine ultimately. But right now, with the fuel prices, one of the truckers that we had a large dinner with, Bill was his name. He said that he told his agent to not even call him unless he's getting at least $4 per mile on hauling, right? And before that, he was only getting $2.66, that sort of thing, and now he wants at least $4 per
Wow.
mile. Obviously, we have to pay for that. I mean, all these things that we're buying. When I was a child, my grandmother would say, "One day, you young people will be buying water in plastic bottles." And I'm like, "Granny, that's never going to happen." And anyway,
Your grandmother.
and she used to always can food with the when times are rough, Michael. When we were young, we had to save every bit. Don't throw any food away, and she would can everything, right? And with the mason jars, and get out of the kitchen, Michael. This thing will explode and blow a hole through the ceiling. I was just
Yeah, I
talking
remember
about it
that.
with my brother last night.
Yeah,
Would your
yeah.
would your grandmother say that too? It's
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
blow a hole through the ceiling.
yeah. And my
Uh,
my granny had a root cellar, and she would she would they called it putting food by. Is that what your granny called it? And you would go down in the root cellar, it would just be full of canned
right.
foods. And of course, the hams, they had the smokehouse, they would smoke the hams. And that, I mean, that's how my mother grew up, and we grew up, going out in the garden, picking, I remember digging potatoes, picking beans, everything, it was, we grew up eating mostly homegrown foods and vegetables. Um, so yeah, I mean that's how I grew up. Yeah, that's how you grew up. A lot of people grew up. A lot of people are getting back to that for sure. My next door neighbors are from China. They have a small farm next door. They grow food year round, and they have chickens.
Chinese are preppers. Chinese are preppers.
Yeah, yeah,
And so are Indians. Indians, they don't
yeah.
play around. They know what a famine is, right?
So yeah. And I'm gonna confess, I haven't been growing food. It's something that, for whatever reason, I just haven't, but I have been stocking up. I've been stocking up on superfoods. I've been stocking up on other foods as well. But yeah, I've got my mom's big enamel pot that you use, for putting the jars in, to seal everything. So I do still have that. I haven't gotten rid of it. Maybe pulling that out at some point. But
The thing is though, Mary Grace, if you're prepared and I'm prepared and all of our neighbors are prepared,
yeah,
then our community is very resilient. So then if some of our friends and family get their houses blown down, this is not a big deal. We
yeah,
got enough because we're collectively, because as individuals we're quite weak. It doesn't matter how strong you are as an individual.
yeah,
As an individual you're weak, but as a team, as a community, as a network, we're very strong, right? But
mhm,
everybody has to be prepared. Everybody needs oil in their lamp, right? If
yes,
half the people don't have oil in their lamp, then they're liabilities. They're not part of the solution. They're
yeah,
dead weight. I mean, everybody has to be prepared. That's why I'm telling everybody, be prepared. I'm prepared. I'm not part of the problem. I'm not afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop somebody with part of my preparations from stealing my acorns, right? I mean, because if everybody's prepared, then I'm part of the solution. But if I haven't gotten my community, help them to become prepared by warning them in advance, I mean, the best thing I can do to prepare as many people as possible is to warn them that we're clearly going into food issues. Very clearly. This is a done deal. The question is how big and how long is it going to last? I don't know these things. Nobody knows these things. But it's very clear that it's coming. The question is how big and how long?
yeah, and that I firmly believe that prayer can alter the course of history. Those of you who saw what happened in the 2016 election, don't think that your prayers didn't affect the outcome of that. Don't think that your prayers are not having an impact on the revelations that we're seeing even now, coming out with what's been happening. I'm being careful on my channel right now because I don't want to get my channels taken down. But the results of what happened last time around, that is not over. That story is not finished. That is not a done deal, and, we need to
Mm.
continue to press in prayer because, again, historically, impossible situations have been turned around through the power of prayer. Our prayers and our standing in authority on the word of God can have an impact. I mean, uh who was it that prayed for the sun to stand still, for the time to stand still? I can't remember who that was. I'm drawing a blank here. My listeners will know. Was it, who was at battle and prayed for time to stand still, and it did because he wasn't finished with the battle. God can do that. And I don't ever discount the power of God to turn things around in a desperate situation. He actually seems to come through the most, in a desperate situation. That's just history, you know? That's why thank you, it was Joshua. That's why David went up to Goliath and said, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that you would come against the armies of the living God?" He knew and he trusted in the power of God to turn around a situation that the entire Israeli army, had said was impossible. They were losing. These seasoned warriors were losing, and a little boy from the fields came and said, "My God can do this." And so I just want to encourage everybody here. Our God can turn this around, and this is as if anything else, you should go away from this broadcast tonight with a renewed zeal for prayer and for believing and renewing your faith in God and going through the scripture and looking at all of the situations when he turned things around because he will do that. He can and he will. Okay. Now, truckers, let's get back to the truckers. Um, are you in communication with them? What is the next thing that you're seeing from them? They went to force change, to force the emergency powers to get reversed. One of the things that I have heard is that Biden might actually invoke the War Powers Act to force them to deliver, to force them to do the things that regime wants them to do. What are you hearing about that?
I don't know where they'll go with that. Ultimately, the truckers can just sit home. I mean, they can just and the government can say, well, we're going to force you to do it, and then it comes down to, okay, go for it. I mean, ultimately, of course, then the government could respond with something crazy like getting a bunch of these migrants without trucking licenses and seizing their trucks, and and they could do something insane. And don't, and one thing that's important is never think that things have to make sense. They don't have to make sense. Decisions do not have to be rational. Most decisions in life are not rational. They're very irrational. In fact, it's very irrational to expect that somebody like Biden or Harris or this whole cabal is going to behave rationally. All the things that they're doing are irrational, right? So, like leaving the border wide open is irrational, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And stopping and destroying our energy independence is irrational. All the CRT with General Milley, who's basically worthless as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Why is he even in uniform? It makes zero sense. But bottom line is, what will the truckers do when the truckers have had enough? They can just park it. Some people will obviously truck, some people won't. When there's food shortages, though, you'll start to see, as I've seen in other countries, the trucks will start to be robbed, like the trains have been robbed in
Yeah.
recent times. It'll just happen. I've seen this happen in other countries. And then the truckers will just stop. They'll stop delivering to places where they get conked in the head. Nobody wants to get red dented. Nobody wants to get beat down and damaged for life or killed in the streets and
Yeah.
set on fire, these sorts of things. Nobody wants this. The truckers will stay home and the cities won't have food. So the government only has so much power. They are, to some extent, extremely powerful, and to another extent, they are the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. At some point, when people just say, I do not comply, and when those numbers are large enough, what are they going to do? What are you really going to do if the
Yeah.
what are you really going to do if the train workers don't show up? Yes, it's illegal for the train union to strike. It's illegal. But what are you really going to do if
Yeah.
the ships stop running, the trains stop running, and the truckers stop running? There will be a civil war instantly, right? And I don't mean it'll build up to it. It'll take like boom. The fuse will be lit, bang, it'll go off instantly. Streets will be filled. I've seen it happen before. It's so predictable that it's actually embarrassing to even have to explain it.
So one of the things that I've noticed is, going back to Trump, when Trump first got, when he was first announced and he was talking about all the things that people wouldn't even imagine, right? Just the migrants, the crime that was coming across the border. People started talking more about, human trafficking, child trafficking, all of the abuses, and then the evils of Congress, the things that they were doing. And at that time, people said, "Oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. There's no such thing. These kids are not being abused. Nothing's happening." Now, come to find out, we just found out that Disney is just pushing a radical agenda, that members of Disney have been arrested on pedophilia charges, things like that. Just unbelievable evil that's coming out. I just heard a story about an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C. that was literally um, uh, murdering babies after they were born. So that's infanticide, no longer abortion. I don't know if you've heard
That's
that.
this straight
Yeah.
up murder.
Yeah, it's murder. And so what I'm saying is that the evil is reaching a peak level. And my take on this is this. First of all, the evil is nothing new. I mean, the times of Sodom and Gomorrah, God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because of the evil. In the Roman times, in the time when Jesus walked the earth, the reason that people were so um, were looking for a savior was because they were under the Roman regime. They were under the power and the rule of Rome, which was horrific. So it's not new. Evil is not new. But what is happening right now is that it's being exposed at a level that people in our generation, people in this era have never seen. I actually think that's a good thing, because when it's exposed, it activates people. What's your take on that, Michael?
I 100% agree. I'm sitting here inside nodding this eye, not this eye. I mean, I've always been skeptical. That's why I became a war correspondent. I didn't believe what I was seeing about Iraq and Afghanistan. I didn't believe it, so I went, right. And but since this pandemic has unfolded, it has really been exposed like never before.
Yeah.
Uh, for instance, I've always been a vaxxer. For instance, in 2019, I was preparing to return to India
Careful,
to
don't get
do.
my channel taken down.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You
That's
gotta
right.
talk
Because
to
the
close.
evil. That's right. I get it. Because the evil beast will not allow us to talk anything truthful, and that is incredibly evil that we
Yeah,
can't even talk about it. So anyway, we know that there's an evil beast watching us, and we're going to get that beast. We're going to stop it. We're going to get it, right? But we're not there yet. But we're moving in on it, right? We're going to get you, right? We
God,
know you're watching.
spoiler
So
alert.
anyway, but the bottom line is, in 2019, I was heading back to India. I spent almost a year in India and another year in Nepal and Sri Lanka and all these places, Bangladesh, And I was heading back, and I've never seen so much disease in my life. So I got some of these things that you have to stick in your arm with the needle, the dangerous things. So I got some of those dangerous things, and because I thought, well, I should get these things in 2019 because I'm going back to India, and I've seen how terrible it is over there. But that was back when I actually believed that they were honest, right?
Yeah,
And then the fighting broke out in Hong Kong, and I said, "Uh-oh, divert from India." And I went to Hong Kong and covered that fighting for 7 months until the Chinese kicked me out, which was quite public when it happened. They should have done it earlier if they were really smart, because I was a bad boy in Hong Kong. But I got those shots in my arm in 2019, and finally ended up in Hong Kong due to the fighting. Let's just be honest. I was helping the people resist CCP, and they got angry and they kicked me out. And it was really obvious what I was doing. So, and so I was pro stick the thing in your arm up until 2020, and especially 2021. And then the curtain opened and I saw how incredibly terrible this was. I just read that book by RFK on Fauci and Gates, by the way. I finished it, I don't know, a month ago.
yeah,
Highly recommend it.
yeah, yeah.
And, and
Dr. Fauci.
yeah, that's right. I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
It took me a lot longer to read that book than normal because you have to study that book. You
I
can't
know,
just
I
fly
know.
through it,
So
right?
many notes. If we even read a chapter of that on here, everything would be banned. So
Oh
everybody
Lord.
read
And
that book.
so, but the bottom line is I went from very pro to kind of neutral to I will never do it again, ever. And so this is a big change on the way that my paradigm on my government is completely shattered, and it's reforming now, and I'm trying to make it more accurate than it was before, right? Like I didn't imagine my government would do this. What amounts to a
Yeah,
mass poisoning event, right? And not
yeah,
what amounts to, what was obviously a mass poisoning event, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I didn't imagine that. So my paradigm has completely changed. And I think many others, millions of others, I think have done the same. And if your paradigm, the way you view the world, is accurate, it should be more predictive than a coin toss, right? It should be relatively predictive. And if you keep tweaking your paradigm day by day as new information comes in, and you're like, I think this will happen, then it doesn't happen, and you're like, okay, then what did I get wrong? And every day you keep trying to shape it so that it's predictive, right? Then you
yeah,
have a working paradigm on how the world works, or at least it's predictive. And this is the fact that I work on my paradigm 7 days a week will explain why I've been so accurate on Iraq and Afghanistan wars and Thailand situation and Korean Japanese relations and what things happen in Hong Kong and the food supply that I've been warning about since January of 2020. It's
mhm,
because every day I wake up and I reassess what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong to try to make my paradigm more accurate. And so, yeah, I've had a complete revelation, shattered one paradigm on. I always knew my government was corrupt. I just didn't realize it was the enemy. and treats us as
Yeah.
slaves.
Yeah.
And now it thinks it's our master. This government's not my master.
Yeah.
We are we've only got one master, and it doesn't sit in Washington, right?
Mhm.
And so and that's it. We've got one master above, and we have none that sit in Washington. These
Amen.
are people
Yeah.
that are supposed to keep these people are supposed to keep the roads and the bridges working. After that, they can shut up and leave us alone. They're
And
not my master. I don't want their advice.
the Apostle Paul said it very, very clearly. I'm a slave to Jesus Christ. That's it. And
That's it.
yeah, I'm a bondservant to Jesus. And this is really important what he's saying, guys, because the freedom that comes from understanding that you are a slave to no man, there's a freedom that's unlike any. And that is when you know that they can kill the body, but they cannot kill the soul. It changes your entire focus. It changes everything you do. I had Clay Clark on the show earlier today, and he was talking about, he used an analogy of how when he was younger, his coach actually made him quit the team so that he could really walk into his destiny, because his coach actually saw a destiny on his life that was different from what Clay was dreaming. And his coach actually had the integrity to take him aside and say, look, for your own good and for your own future, I think this is what you should focus on, not basketball. And so he used that analogy to talk about what he's doing now. And I think that that's really important for people to understand that when you really get down to the nitty gritty of what your purpose is here, so many of you are having paradigm shifts, even as you listen to this conversation right now. And that's undeniable. It's so important that you really dig deep and that you start to understand who you are and whose you are. Because if you are gripped by fear and you don't understand the higher calling that God has on your life, it's time to start asking those questions and ask Him to show you. Because the people who brought us our country, the people who fought the Revolutionary War, who fought the British, the very things that Michael is saying tonight are the reasons that we are here today, because they understood we are not slaves. We are not chattel for their industry. And that is what they were being treated as by the British. We are here today in 2022 because many of the same people and entities that we beat back in 1776, they never got over losing. And they still see us as chattel and human slaves. And that is just not going to happen. Not on my watch. My ancestors didn't die and go to war for that. So this is a serious show tonight. It's a serious topic, but it's imperative that everybody here understand who you are. If you are walking in a victim mentality tonight, it's time to walk out of that. It's time to walk into victor and to walk in the freedom that is your God-given right. It's your birthright. Freedom is your birthright. Don't give it away, and certainly don't ever ask for it, because it's yours to take hold of. That's just, yeah, you gotta understand that. You gotta understand it, because then you're a slave to no man. You're a slave to no man. Nobody can tell you what is your right and what is a privilege. It's your God-given right. You have to understand that. Read the Declaration of Independence, read the Constitution, understand what's at stake here. It's a zero-sum game. There's only one winner here. Though we know that God wins, but the beast, the evil that is afoot, absolutely must be put down and defeated once and for all. It has to.
It's a big fight, and we're in the middle of it. You know, we can sit down and we can do nothing. I have an office in Thailand and a home in Thailand. I could easily just have stayed there, right? There's plenty of food in Thailand. Everywhere is a farm. And but when the United States got in trouble, I've spent most of my life in other countries. More than half of my life has been in more than 80 other countries. So I've spent less than half of my life in the United States. And the rest of that time is places like India or off in wars and this sort of thing, right? And when I saw the United States was in trouble, I came back in September of 2020 because I believe in the United States. I believe in the things that people have fought and worked very hard for and suffered terribly for. This is the only place without the United States. I'm on constant global recon. I know what's out there. I'm always outside the wire, right? I'm out with the beasts constantly. And the United States is one place I always want to know that I can come home to, right? And if the
Yeah.
United States is not a place I can come home to, then I must go home and fight for my country. And that's
Mm.
why I'm here. Otherwise, I would be off living the life in Thailand, no problem, everything's fine, and watching my country fall apart. I could never live with myself. It would be, then my life would be worthless, essentially worthless. My family came over in 1609. We know this because they're in a book called The Sea Venture, and they got shipwrecked on Bermuda. They got shipwrecked on Bermuda on the way to Jamestown. My grandparents were on that ship. And the Easons, Eason, that's my mother's direct side, right? And they got shipwrecked on Bermuda for about 10 months. There was no Indians there. There's nobody lived on Bermuda. And there had been a Spanish ship that came about 100 years earlier and left pigs because, that's why pigs ended up all over the world, because explorers would leave pigs everywhere, right? And because they could come back and get food, right? So there was plenty of food. They had 2 Indians with them that had been brought over to England to say, hey, the Indians are friendly, but in reality they were hostages, and the Indians were coming back to Jamestown, and the shipwreck happened, and they were stuck there for 10 months, and they built ships out of cedar because the only trees that grew on Bermuda were cedar trees, right? So they were fine. They lived there for 10 months. There was a mutiny. A couple of, I think 2 or 3 people were executed. May have been 2. And my uncle was born on Bermuda, the first living baby. His name was Bermudus, Bermuda with an S on the end, and his godfather married Pocahontas. So my uncle's godfather married Pocahontas actually later, right? After they made it. So they finally made it to Jamestown. We know all this because there was an author on the ship. He was hired to basically do propaganda to tell everybody how great basically it was a mission to Mars. It happened to be Virginia colony, right? And so they ended up in Jamestown in 1610. They made it. And there was a famine going on, literally a famine after 7 years of drought. And it was the 7 years, the 7th year of 7 years. They were doing literal cannibalism, eating each other and Indians. This is in evidence. And of course, the people in Jamestown wanted to go back. And then the people that my grandparents, the ship, or they made those 2 other ships and had made it there, the captain refused to go back. And long story short, that's how I became American, right? Was boom. And it started off in hardship. And my family, like the Forrest Gump family, has fought in every war. Probably started 1 or 2 of them. I have no idea. But I mean, literally, grandfathers in the Revolutionary War and the whole. I'm as American as it gets. I have no memory of other countries. My family doesn't sit around and talk about how it was in India or
Yeah.
Poland or.
Yeah.
I've lived in many of these countries. I lived in Poland for 2 years. Ich spreche Deutsch, ich kann fließend Deutsch sprechen. I speak fluent German. Ich habe in Deutschland for 4 Jahre gewohnt. I lived in Germany 4 years. I have no problem. I live overseas, but I'm as American as it gets. And I'm not going to. I will not abandon my country. I mean, it's just not in me to do it, and that's why I'm back here. So when I'm
Yeah.
warning people to stock up and prepare, I'm doing my duty. And if they don't take my advice, then their lamps will be without oil and they'll be left behind. I mean, bottom line.
You took your oath seriously, from not
I
just
take it very seriously.
the oath that you took as a grown adult, but the oath that your ancestors took as well. And I'm on the same page as you. We have a similar history. We've compared notes. And it's important. It's really important that people understand what this country stands for. Has our government done some really bad things? Absolutely. But the founding fathers and the founding documents lay out a covenant with God that is an irrefutable declaration of our freedom and our independence from any form of slavery. And that is what the oath is about. When somebody swears to uphold the Constitution, that is what that oath is about. That oath has nothing to do with protecting individuals up in Washington, D.C., who are getting wealthy and fat off of the sweat of the backs of Americans. That is not what the oath is about. The oath is to protect and to uphold the Constitution, the founding documents of this nation and to uphold the covenant that they made with Almighty God. So I want people to never forget that, because this is why we're here. This is why we do what we do. This is why I'm on my third show today on this channel, is because of my dedication to getting the word out and to empowering and equipping people to take back your freedoms. It's just absolutely essential that you understand this. You're not going to be motivated to do it until you really understand what's at stake here. So many people sit there and say, "Oh, nothing's going to happen. Nothing." Well, the truth of the matter is, there were people at the time of George Washington who sat there and said that too. It was a very small percentage of patriots who went to Valley Forge and who weathered the winter of pandemic, who walked into battle believing in a general who had lost many times, who went in with no shoes, barely any clothes, hardly any food. Those are the ones who believed, and they were fighting for the people that were sitting home and saying nothing's going to happen, or who were actually selling them out to the British. This is who we are right now. And how many of you listening right now, how many of you are answering the call to uphold the oath that those men and women took back in 1776? How many of you um, are on that side of freedom? Because this is not over. This is far from over. We are at war. Our country is at war. Our world is at war. You can't forget that. And what we're doing right now as Americans, we're actually fighting for the freedoms of civilization. We're fighting for the survival of Western civilization.
Yep.
I can't stress that enough. And I've been saying this for years, and I've lost friends over it. I've lost family members over it, people that won't talk to me anymore. Well, guess what? I'm fighting for them too. Michael's fighting for those people too. That's what we're fighting for. And somebody in the chat said the government is too big. Absolutely, 100% it is. We never ever swore an oath to uphold the government. It's the Constitution that we're upholding. It needs to go back down to the stripped bare, to the rafters and to the very foundation. That's what I am fighting for.
Right.
I'm soapbox here, but I think it's important. It's really important to understand this. On another practical question, Michael, I wanted to ask you about currency. The Russians have gone back or going back to the gold standard. We're seeing this happen. We're seeing governments go to digital currency. It's been rumored that President Trump wants to bring America back to the gold standard. I happen to believe that his work is not over. Um, what's happening? What are you seeing happen right now with currency? What are you seeing happen on that front? Are you in a position to comment on that?
I'm not an economist, so I'm going to be careful. If you want to talk about war, I can talk about it till the cows come home. But when it comes to the economy, I definitely do study it. So I'm
Okay.
not coming into this with a clean slate and completely ignorant. I will tell you this: I've divested myself of most of my cash. Cash is trash. I mean, the clearly the inflation is going through the roof. I mean, I've put it into things that are gaining in value, like food, and other things that are gaining in value, things that I can use, right? And so I've invested in myself and in my family and friends and my community in ways, for instance, a lot of food. I bought a lot of food. And like a tremendous amount of food, and so because not just for me, but also I can sell it later, so it's relatively inflation. Well, it's very inflation resistant, right? And other things that you can imagine that I've invested in. But not, I haven't put anything in precious metals whatsoever. A lot of my friends have, but again, I'm not giving any advice on this and on that, right? But I do think, I've proven to be correct so far, that food is going to explode in price. Most of what I bought was in 2020, and I bought a tremendous amount, and now it's got to be worth at least 50% more, right? At least. And at this rate, by next year, I don't know how much it's going to be worth, but it's going to be worth a lot more than I paid for it. And I don't have to worry about every second your dollars are being chipped away. One of the things I've seen in other countries, and I've spent a lot of time in Oh Lord, I was all over the East Bloc when it was still communist and that sort of. I've been in many communist countries. One day you can wake up and you've got X dollars in the bank and they just chop a zero off the end, right? Like you had $100,000. Well, now you have 10,000, or you just can't get your money out. The ATMs, you can only get it through the ATM, let's say, and it'll give you $50 or $100, right? And that's it. While the inflation just robs you blind, right? I've seen these sorts of things happen before, and they will happen again. You see, the
Yeah,
IRS, the federal government is, stocking up on IRS agents, right? To
yeah,
the tune of tens of thousands more hiring. They're clearly planning to go after people. They're clearly planning to do a mass robbery event. And they'll do it. I mean, because we're looking at the beast. We don't.
yeah.
They intend to strong arm rob the United States of America and its citizens.
Yeah, yeah. The IRS agent thing, I think that was part of a bill that they were trying to pass. I don't think it went through, but that's their intention. And they also want to force banks to report on deposits on transactions of higher than $600. Meanwhile, these
Right.
politicians are.
They did not hire them. They did not hire
I
them.
don't think it went through. If anybody in the chat is aware of that, I know what you're talking about. Um, yeah, so I don't think that
If
went
they
through.
have not, if they have not, I happily stand corrected.
Okay, yeah, I hope I think I'm right about that. I didn't follow it too closely, but
I
I
hope you
remember
are right. I hope
that. Yeah,
you're right.
I hope
Uh,
I'm right.
we
But
can
the
we
fact,
can see
but
their intent. We
but
can
the
see
fact
their
that they
intent.
want, yeah, the fact that they want to do that is really a problem. The fact that they
Yeah.
want to, the fact that they want to have the fact that they want to uh, monitor financial transactions of private citizens, period, is a problem. That they want to
Right.
monitor over $600 transactions is a big problem, especially because of the amount of money that these elite politicians are making in insider trading. I mean, the wealth that they come away from being public servants is just obscene. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I just wanna take an aside here for a minute, because I wanna be clear about something. This, conversation that we're having tonight, for my listeners, this is a conversation. It's not a monologue for either one of us. Some people in the conversation are saying, "Stop interrupting, let Michael talk." We're here to have a conversation. If that's not your cup of tea, if it doesn't suit you, you can come back for a different show. But it's not just a solo act here tonight. I just wanted to make that clear. We're having a good time having a conversation, and I think people are really learning. And I think that some of the questions that are coming up are really good. So yeah, just it's all good. People are learning. We both have a lot to say. We enjoy conversations like this, and we're bringing you into this conversation. So welcome everybody that wants to be a part of that. Um, yeah, I just had to get that out there. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's a dialogue, and it's a good dialogue. So I appreciate everybody
I'm looking
being
for it. I'm looking for it here so I can see the questions, but I don't see where it's live streaming.
on Facebook.
Uh,
Here, let me
yeah.
send you the link. Somebody said,
Okay.
that that bill did not go through. Um,
Oh, good. That's
yeah.
happy news.
So, yep, yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for looking that up or knowing that. And I saw that they're looking to. I didn't only saw the headlines here. They're looking to hire 10,000 to clear a backlog.
Yeah,
Is
right.
is what I'm
Yeah,
seeing here. Okay. Thank you for looking that up, or just
yeah,
happening
backlog. But
happening to know it.
we know
Mhm.
how we
Oh, I see
know
it there.
how that works. We know what happened, during the Tea Party years. I had clients and friends who were audited. Their businesses were audited 2, 3, and 4 times within a couple of years because of their political views. So, guys, the methodologies, the things that we see coming from this government, it doesn't change. All that changed was the names of the people that are supposedly up in the White House. That's all that's changed. It,
Oh, Mary
and
Grace. Mary Grace, I found your page and it's a 1,100 comments. I was going to say I'll read all the comments and try to answer the questions, but I think that's not realistic. Ooh, okay. I'll just stab in there sometime and like try to
Okay.
gig a question out. So,
So anyway, yeah, it's we've got a big audience. At one point, I think we were over 1,000 on the Facebook feed
yeah.
listening. Yeah, this we're getting tremendous traffic here. And for those of you who are on social media who are sharing this, I'm going to take this moment to tell you this channel is Mary Grace Media. You are on Real Talk with Mary Grace. Our guest tonight is Michael Yon. He's a combat correspondent. He's a writer, he's a photographer, is a veteran of the United States Army, and he's an American through and through. You can follow him on michaelyon.locals.com. He has a blog that he puts up there. You can Google him, just watch out for the leftists. They might not necessarily like him, but that is what it is. You understand. Take it all with a grain of salt. But please share this. Please tag people and please put this into groups that you belong to. That is how we get the word out. And your comments and your interaction in the chat actually help to get this trending. So if you're on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, if you're coming back to watch the replay, the comments that you put and the interaction that you have is part of what gets around it. At some point, after we reach critical mass, they just can't stop us. And that's God's economy at work, you guys. We just
Yeah.
yeah, go
And
right
look at Elon Musk just bought over 9% of Twitter,
I
and
know.
now that's causing some kerfluffle. I wonder if he's going to give Donald Trump his account back. I mean, or
Yeah,
not that he has the power to do that, but to
I think he does.
influence Twitter enough to do that.
He's on the
Uh,
board now. Yeah.
yeah, he's on the board, so
He
I
was
mean, he can
people
always try
today.
to buy more stock. What's that?
Yeah, he was asking today if they should have an edit button. And I said, no. I said, bring Trump back and then give me my account back because I had a big account on Twitter and they took it down, but it's not completely disappeared. It's still like,
Right.
it's the shell of it is still there. All they have to do is turn it back on and give me back all my followers and bring Trump back. But that's
But you're dangerous.
I know I'm weaponized, aren't I?
I'm I'm almost ashamed they haven't blocked me. I feel like I'm not doing my job.
Come on, get with it.
I don't
Uh,
know how they haven't blocked me because I'm openly since the beginning saying don't take the thing in the arm.
yeah. Well, I've been more careful about that, but I mean, my 2 strikes on YouTube were basically because I went outside of the party line and, who know I don't know how long this YouTube channel is gonna be up, whatever. I kinda wanna bring on somebody super controversial and just go out, like, in a blaze of glory from the channel. Like, who should I bring on? Who should I bring on? Who should the final shootout be with my YouTube channel? Like, what can we do to just, like, totally bring it down in flames and go out in a blaze of glory? Anybody in the chat, tell me, who should I
I'm
get
sure
on?
we can come up with somebody. I'm sure we can find the right person.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, guys, the reason that I have fun with this, somebody says bring on Trump. Absolutely. If I bring on Trump, Steve Bannon, should I get Steve Bannon on my YouTube? You think Bannon would come on to help me go down in flames?
He probably would. Steve is great.
Or
Steve is
just
great.
tell him you
Steve's
got
a
to.
knife fighter. Some people are like, Steve's rough. I'm like, yes, he's rough. Who do you think can win these wars? A bunch
Yeah.
of dainty guys that are getting their nails done? Or Steve Bannon, who forgets to shave for like 8 weeks at a time? He's always fighting. That's all he does is fight. I don't think he even sleeps. He just
Call him.
goes back and I communicate with him every day. I mean, he's
Yeah,
asking me today, can I come on the show? But I was on the border all day. But I mean, I'm on your show, but I
I
love
know.
Steve. I mean,
Tell
he
him,
fights like a madman.
tell him to come on. Tell him you have a mission for him. We have to bring down YouTube. That would be so
Oh my
fun.
gosh.
It would take how long? All right, guys, what's the over under on how long my YouTube feed would stay up if I brought Steve Bannon on? That would just be so good.
But he went on. He's gone on quite a few shows that are on YouTube, and they didn't take him down. So
They didn't? Okay, we need to come up with somebody else. Somebody said Johnny Enlow. Yeah, Johnny Enlow, they don't like him at all. They don't like Ann Vandersteel. When she came on my show twice in
I
1
like
week.
Ann. What, they don't like Ann?
Oh, no, she's been banned so many times off of YouTube. She can't even ever go on YouTube again. So
She's like persona non grata.
oh, yeah, just the sound of her voice triggers them, right? They're like, "Oh my god, it's that woman." Just the same as when Trump,
Anna
even
non grata.
if somebody plays a video with Trump's voice on it on YouTube or Facebook, it gets taken down. Just his voice. His voice is banned. Can you believe that? So if I do
Are you
it,
serious?
if we do a Donald Trump impression, do you think they'll take it down? I think we should really try. I can't really do the impression though. But
We need
what's
a voice synthesizing software.
yeah, what's it really like on the border? I mean, is it really, really bad? Is it just like we just gotta get that big, beautiful wall built again? That's the best I can do with
Yeah.
Donald Trump. But somebody said bring on
Oh,
Charlie.
I call them invaders, and that's exactly what they are. It's an invasion. We're
Yeah,
getting invaded, and that
yeah,
sort of stuff will get. Let me go back to that. Back in January and February and March of 2020, so more than 2 years ago now, I was saying that this was a pandemic, and that would get you blocked back then, especially in
yep.
January, February, and I was constantly saying, and they didn't block me, and they were blocking other people for saying it's a pandemic, and I don't know why,
Does that
because I was saying more serious things. Yeah,
are you
I
on
have
their
no idea.
payroll? Are you one of them?
I'm
Are
I'm
you
wondering, why don't they block me? Are they up to something? You know what I mean? Are they watching my network? I have no
I don't
idea.
know. I
Uh,
don't know.
I, I don't know. And not that I go on Facebook much anymore. I rarely go on there.
Yeah.
I mean, my one of my people puts the things that I put on locals, because I post on locals and then it goes to my website, michaelyon.com. But I post on locals every day, and then that gets put on Facebook. But I'm not actually doing it. I'm not actually on Facebook. Although I came on to watch the comments, and then there's so many, it was hard to track them. Oh, Lindell. Yeah, there you go. Somebody comment just. Oh,
Oh,
Lisa Jennings said Lindell. That's a good idea, Lindell. Oh yeah.
yeah.
I don't personally know Lindell, but I definitely know multiple people that do. I know like 5 ways to get to him, so I could, or you probably do as well. So you can probably get
Yeah, we could probably get
Mike
him.
in there.
Somebody
I
said
like him. From
yeah,
crack addict to CEO, you know what I mean?
his
I'm
book
just
was
like, that's the
so good.
American dream. You
I
can
know.
really mess up like that and still clean yourself up and just come right on back like a hurricane. You know what I mean?
Not only
He's
that,
really, you
he
know,
he talk about dedicated. I mean, he wasn't even really political. And this is what's so important that people have to understand, like, when God calls you to change lanes, you better change lanes because
yeah,
the
that's right.
the impact that Mike Lindell has had on all of this has been just phenomenal. And he was not a political guy. And he was a crackhead, but he wasn't political. He wasn't engaged in the process at all. He didn't even know how elections work. And look at him now. So when God calls you, answer the call. Somebody said I should have Dr. Malone on, or Najid how do you say his name? Najid. He went on with Joe Rogan. I should have Joe Rogan on. Joe Rogan's going to be on my show one day. I'm just
Michelle said Alex Jones. Alex Jones. Alex Jones. That guy's funny. My niece sent me something the other day. Alex Jones was talking about eating his neighbor, right? And somebody made a song about it. Alex Jones talking about with the food shortage, he was going to eat his neighbor. That guy's hilarious. I don't watch his stuff actually, but that
yeah,
one was quite funny.
I think Alex Jones is what you call a shock jockey. Is that the word
Yeah,
for it?
shock jock.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he just
How
yeah.
about Robert Kennedy?
Oh, Robert
Diane says
Jr.,
Robert Kennedy will tell you who killed his
yeah,
daughter.
Roger Stone.
Uh,
You could have Jordan Peterson. Yeah, Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough. That would probably get us taken off. Mel K. Yeah.
Dr.
So
Malone. I was on a show with Dr. Malone recently. Let's see. It was who was on? Dr. Malone and a couple of others. It was a good show.
yeah, we'll
Um,
we'll have to make sure. Yeah. I'd love to interview him, but that would probably be on Rumble for sure.
He's pretty squared away. He's a really good guy. He's
Yeah.
a smart guy.
He
And,
lives
and
near me. He
go
lives,
ahead.
probably within about an hour and a half of where I live. So,
Oh,
yeah, when
Lauren,
I
Richie said Lauren Boebert.
see, I don't think that would
Oh,
get banned though. Stu Peters, um, you need attorneys, not doctors. I don't know what that means.
the preacher in Canada. Huh.
Oh,
Yeah. Mm.
uh, what's his name? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the minister, the pastor, Pawlowski. Is that the way you say it? This guy has been, he's a, you know about him? He's Polish, and Artur Pawlowski. Yeah, he has been
Oh,
in jail for like 3 months. He's been arrested
oh,
multiple.
really?
Yeah, he's the one who kept having church, and he kept kicking the police out and calling them Nazis. And he was walking through Ottawa when the truckers were there, and basically, telling people like, I know what's
Mm,
going to happen here. I've seen this happen because he lived
mm.
through. He was part of Polish solidarity.
Solidarity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you should
Hmm.
definitely follow him. Yeah, if I brought him on, that would be the end of my channel. That would be actually pretty cool because he kept
Yeah.
the church open,
Yeah.
and he kicked them out and called them all Nazis. He's been on Ann's show. Um,
Oh, right.
yeah, but of course she's not on she's not on YouTube anymore. She's still on
Right.
Facebook, remarkably. I don't know how, but yeah. So anyway, we're just surveying the chat
Oh,
here.
let me say something. Can I say something?
Please.
I was at SpaceX a couple of days ago because SpaceX is at the end of the border wall, right?
Oh, okay.
And there were two guys there. One is 23 years old. His name is Nick Ansuini, and the other one is his name is Cooper. He's 18. So they both left from Missouri to go. It's on my locals page,
Okay.
and so they both left Missouri because they want to fly to Mars. So Nick has been sleeping on the beach. He lost 100 pounds. Been sleeping on the beach, photographing SpaceX stuff, amazing stuff. I've seen a lot of their photos. I
Yeah.
follow them on Twitter, right? And so they're both from Missouri. They grew up like 30 minutes apart. The 18-year-old Cooper, he made a rocket that's 9 feet long when he was 16, which blew up part of his house anyway, and gave him tinnitus. But he's a boy. He's a boy. I mean, you know what I mean. He's a smart kid too, and
Yeah.
he told me. I said, "Where's that rocket?" He said, "It's in my apartment." It's like, "Oh, you don't live on the beach anymore?" It's like, "No, we met each other here, and then we got an apartment together." So I said, "Let me see your apartment, which is in Brownsville, not far from SpaceX." So we
Yeah.
go over and we look at their apartment. This is 2 days ago, and it's like a museum, man. They got all these models of. I was like, "Is this Voyager?" They're surprised I know all this stuff because I'm like a space
Yeah.
geek too,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "You guys are just younger versions of me. I went off to be a Green Beret. You're going to Mars, man." That's like, which is a lot cooler than going to be a Green Beret. I'll tell you that much. And so, and so they are just dead set on it. So they're out there every day, 7 days a week, and they have all their apartment is like a little museum for rockets on the walls that they built and models and all their camera gear. And so they're publishing their stuff on Twitter every day.
What?
And the
Hold
account
on.
the account
Are you saying
look on my locals.
is this
Look on my
ultimate,
locals.
the ultimate man cave? Is that what you're saying? Do
Oh,
they
for
have?
those two? Oh
It's the
yeah, they're 18 years old. I went to their refrigerator. I said, okay, I'm gonna do a refrigerator inspection here. I look in their refrigerator. I was hoping I didn't see a bunch of beer and crap. I opened the refrigerator, no beer, no nothing, no, just eggs and like a lot of eggs. I'm like, what are you doing with all these eggs, man? Where's the chickens? Where'd you get all these eggs? It's like 100 eggs in here or something. Had to be at least 100 eggs. And
Wow.
I'm like, you guys must like eggs. Anyway, it was all healthy stuff
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and a lot of eggs. And so, I'm just like, you guys are awesome, man. And I took, you don't know my friend Tim Lynch, but he's a retired Marine officer, and I was with him in Afghanistan. So Tim and I, we took him to dinner, and you know,
Okay.
and we sat hours talking with these kids. We're just like, man, you guys are gonna make it. Just got to keep that edge that you might not make it, because if you get overconfident, then you know you'll just fail.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you got that confidence that you can, and know that you can fail, then your chances are really high that you can succeed. So they're out there, and you know, I sent them a message today. I was like, you know, because they both want to go to Mars and be able to help build the station, build the, you know, the new community, the colony, right? And
It's
and I
amazing.
said, you know, maybe you want to get a job as building part of the spacecraft. And both of them are like, we're not going to go to college because they're just programming people. We need to learn how to do stuff that they
Yeah,
need in
yeah.
space. Like, you know, so we're gonna, you know, we're just, all they do is study space stuff constantly and stay out there at SpaceX and photograph thousands and thousands. Look at my locals and scroll down to about 3 different entries. Do you see
Okay.
them?
So michaelyan.locals.com. That's where everybody don't go right now, guys. Go later. But
Yeah,
their
go later.
Their Twitter feed is on there. The Twitter feed. They should get on Telegram. They should get off of commie Twitter. But somebody's
Yeah.
asking, do you have a Telegram channel? Do you have a Michael Yan
I,
sit rep?
there is, but I never go on there. Somebody puts I put it on locals. Almost everything I publish goes on locals first,
Yeah.
and then my assistant feeds it out to Facebook and my main website, michaelyan.com. But if you go to my locals page, that's where you're likely to see, because that comes straight from my hands.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be like out on the border putting something up on locals, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Or I'm off in
Yeah.
Lithuania or in Darien Gap in Panama, or January 6th, you know, I was there. And so, but look at these kids, man. Cooper Heim, he's 18 years old, and I got him on video too. I put the camera on tripod, wired him up, long interview, and just like, yeah, I was, you know, Cooper's like, I built this rocket when I was, and the rocket's right above him. It's in their apartment. It's 9 feet long. And he said, but it's illegal for me to launch this when I'm 16. So some adults were like, okay, you know, this is a great rocket, and they helped him launch it. And he had cameras on it. And so he showed me the video, and you can see the rocket's completely stabilized. I mean, so in other words, it's hard to build a rocket so that it's actually stabilized and it doesn't
Yeah.
twist and turn and go curvy and stuff, you know. But he built it from bottom. He said he went to like it was a Home Depot or somewhere where they sell carpets, and he got empty carpet. You know, the carpets were
Oh
sold.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
get those strong
Yeah.
tubes. So that's what he used the tubes out of. He said he went there and he's like, "How much are these tubes?" They're like, they're free. And he's like, can I just take them? They're like, yeah, you can just take them, you know. and and so they at one point we had to end the interview with Nick, because he had to go to church. So he was off in church for a couple of hours. Then he came back. Nick Ansuini, he's 23. And then after church, then we kept going with him as well. Then we
Yeah.
went back to SpaceX and wired them up. And look at the photo of them. You got to go to my
I
locals,
can't
and
you gotta
they're
send
epic.
me the link. Send me the link because I'm not I guess
Oh yeah,
I don't know if I have
they're
my log.
very inspiring. I sent that out to a lot of my military friends and others, and they're like, "Ah, man, I love those kids." You know, I mean, look at them. They are making their destiny, right? And they're going. They're not going to sit down and be victims. You know, they're
Amazing.
willing to sleep on the beach and sleep in the back of their car and all this stuff. Man, they're just hardcore.
I
Yeah,
can't
and yeah,
I'm looking for the right stuff. Okay. So the
yeah, the
article
right stuff.
the right stuff. Oh gosh, here's
You
the
see,
picture. This is
I
cool.
made that. I made that photo 2 days ago. That's
This
the Starship right there. That's the Starship. That's the ship. That's the ship that's designed to go to Mars, and it's
yeah,
stuck right there right now. I made that photo 2 days ago, and where
that's
I'm standing, you see the guy on the right. The guy on
yeah,
the right is Nick. He's the 23-year-old holding his camera. I'm standing where he slept on the beach and lost 100 pounds. So I made this photo from the beach. Behind me is the Gulf of Mexico, and that's SpaceX. That's how close you can get. You don't need a pass. You don't need anything. You can just walk right up, man. It's like, well, you can't walk up. Well, you can if you got like a day to walk out there. You need to drive out there, and it's completely public. And you can stand right where we just stood, right there.
wow.
That is the Mars spaceship right there. This isn't a model, but this is a test one. The FAA is slowing them down. They're gonna try to launch it in May. They wanted
Yeah,
to launch it in December, and then, you know, the government's the worthless government that it is. But so So it's ready to go. They've already stacked it. It's unstacked right now. When I say stack, I mean that's when you add the first and second stage, and then add the spacecraft on top of that. And now they've unstacked it again. They've been testing the stack, and it's ready to go. I mean, there's liquid oxygen tanks, and all the fuel is right beside it down there. All they gotta do is stack it up, bolt it together, gas it up, and off to space. The biggest rocket in the world. That's the biggest rocket ever built. It's unbelievable. It's bigger than the Saturn V rockets. It's bigger than the Apollo program rockets that went to the moon. Significantly bigger. Not like a little bit. We're talking like up to double, right? I mean, it's unbelievable, depending on the payload and the number of engines they put on it and stuff.
In that
And
photo,
so they want to go on it. And so they want to go.
well, they should. Are they tagging Elon Musk on every single tweet? They should be.
I think they're just Elon Musk lives like 2 miles from where I shot that photo.
Why don't you post that and tag Elon and tell him he needs to get with those boys?
Actually, one of my friends messaged me yesterday, and he said he's really good friends with Elon Musk's lawyer. He just messaged me when he saw me put this up. I was like, really? Hey, yeah. So I'm gonna go see him in a few days, and I'm gonna say, send this to Elon Musk's lawyer, and because I want to get these kids. They're not kids; they're men. One's 18, and the other's. When I was 18, I was going through Green Beret training. They're not kids; they're men now. You know what I mean? And it's they can make it. They're going to need a little bit of guidance here and there to make sure they're staying in between the white lines, and then and show them which ways to go. But they got the energy, they got the courage, and it was just so exciting. So I sent this out to a lot of my friends privately, like my sister and brother and all kinds of Green Beret friends and stuff. Everybody's like, man, I hope they make it. And I told him, I said, listen, when you go to Mars, I'm going to be like sending you messages all day. It's going to take like 20 minutes to get to you. And I expect you to send me pictures back.
Or they better bring you a souvenir.
What's that?
They better bring you a souvenir, like some Mars dust.
I don't know if they'll be coming back.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is just
y'all need to grab some girlfriends, because I don't think I'd want to go to Mars up there forever without a wife. You know what I mean? But just wouldn't be very fun.
This is so mine. This is so mine. I have to read this comment because this conversation started out just so dire and so dark. But this is America, guys. So we have hope. This is he's talking about the American dream right now, and it's not over. And I want to read this comment because I think it's so good, because we're pushing on 2 hours on this broadcast. But she says, Mary Grace, my husband says you don't need to do these late night podcasts because you get me so riled up I can't go to sleep for hours. So that's a good thing, right? We're celebrating right now just the absolute unbreakable spirit of the Americans, and that's what I absolutely love. So
I asked them how much food they have. Ask them, do you realize that we have some issues here on Earth? And they're like, oh yeah, we're worried about the food. And I said, how much food do you have? And they both said 3 months. And then when I was with them, I was like, okay, they're going to get part of my food supply. If something really goes bad, I'm going to feed these two, because I'm going to get them to Mars. I'm going to do my part.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's crazy. So how do you get all that food to Mars? So, like, what? I mean, we don't know what it's like up there.
Oh, no. Elon Musk is launching thousands of missions. Not like this is not like 10 missions to Mars. We're talking about like massive amounts of missions. I mean, the Starship, it's called Starship, on the super heavy booster, may depending on how well that they do with the engineering, may be able to lift up to 150 tons. And I think Apollo max to low Earth orbit, Leo, could do like 70. I think I could be wrong on that. Please fact check me. But I think Apollo could do about 70. And if this one really works out well, it might do 150 or at least 100 tons, which is it's a little bit of weight. And so there's that. But then they'll be doing many, many more missions, right? If you go to SpaceX, you have to take the kids. I keep telling all my friends, you've got to come to SpaceX with me, and don't come without your kids, because I don't want to see you. I want you to bring your kids, because we got to get the kids properly brainwashed to work on space stuff. You know what I mean? Get rid of all these videos and stuff and start working on real stuff, like
Oh,
all the stuff that Elon Musk is doing, like putting up Starlink, all the satellites. I've watched many of those launches, and the Boring Company digging the tunnels, and the Tesla cars, and all this stuff is if you're paying attention, it's all designed to be transplanted to Mars. Like, in other words, once we got Starlink working here, and everybody puts up all these thousands of little satellites and all of our little Pi phones, that you'll then be able to have a phone that works everywhere with fast internet. It's already working to load it, not the phone yet, but anyway, all these things, the Boring Company, the Tesla cars, the solar homes, this is all for Mars. All this stuff is for Mars. This is not just random stuff. These Tesla cars aren't just to make cool cars. He's funding the whole mission to Mars on this stuff, right?
yeah,
And this is the stuff that he needs to do it with. This is absolutely 1,000-year level genius. You don't see geniuses like this all the time. I'm not sure Einstein rises to this level of genius. And the thing is you can drive right into SpaceX, and you can just, that's unbelievable. That's how close you can get, closer than we are there to those rockets.
yeah.
It's just amazing. You can hear them fueling. You can hear the off gassing and stuff. You're that close where it's like you're talking on the phone, and it's like, sorry, hold on, the thing's off gassing.
That's amazing. That's
You
amazing.
know.
I want to say something about this because this is somebody in the chat said something interesting, and this is I really hope that you evolve from this way of thinking. Somebody said, "Who cares about Mars? What the state of our country is in?" So here's the thing, guys. I said it before. I'll say it again. Evil has always been a part of existence ever since the fall of mankind in the garden. That it just is. I mean, the whole earth was wiped out by a flood because of the preponderance of evil. So let's just not forget that. But what is the thing that cannot be taken away? And that is the human spirit, the spirit of exploration. America is what it is because of that. I mean, the reason that we fly airplanes is because of two brothers, the Wright brothers in Ohio, who
That's right.
who had a bicycle repair shop and had a dream to fly. This is
That's
so
right.
important. It's important that we never stop dreaming. And
Right.
and the Bible says that that a time will come when your old men will dream dreams and the young men will see visions. Well, right now, Michael is describing to you young men who have a vision. They have a
Yeah.
vision, 1,000-year vision. Elon Musk has a 1,000-year vision. President Trump has a vision for generations. And that is why we do what we do. This is not entertainment. This is not just a passing fancy. People people have always dreamed and had visions, and they've been motivated by that. That is what we're talking about here. And that brings me to a question, Michael, just about you. So, you're one of these people you're just kind of unstoppable. And, you're out there in the field, you're downrange, you're constantly pursuing the story because of the love of what you do. But you said something to me kind of interesting one time about we were talking about just childhood, right? And just the way that our generation grew up. And I just want to add, I want to take it a little bit personal. I just want to ask you, like, what was it in you? Do you remember like a time when you decided, hey, I'm going to go serve my country? There's something bigger beyond my neighborhood and riding my bike and whatever it is in me as a boy. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about how you got to that from being a kid, having a thorough upbringing to being 18 and training to be a Green Beret? Just can you tell us that?
Yeah, that's hard to say because it's part of the whole package of the environment and the culture, which was a pro-military culture. Uh, my grandfather was not well educated, but one of the most brilliant men. A lot of people said that in our town, and he was basically like a Bible scholar as well. Never served in the military, but many of my family did. Like I said, many of I say my grandfather because after my mother died, I grew up a lot with my grandparents. and was raised partly by a black woman for a while and things like that. So I had a lot of exposure to different things. She was great to me. Used to take me fishing all the time. And Michael, get back from that lake, boy. You're gonna get bit by a snake. And I'm like, that's why I'm down here, Viola. I'm gonna catch one. You know what I mean? And it was like, don't you catch another snake, boy. You're gonna get bit. You know, I had a great and sometimes very tough upbringing, but other times it was just fantastic. It just depends on which part of it. But by the time I got to Green Beret training, the Army was it was easy for me. I mean, Green Beret training was kind of challenging. It was very tough, actually. But I mean, I was psychologically and emotionally ready for it. I was like, let's go, make it harder. You know what I mean?
What
And
is what is it that makes that kind of person? Because people
I don't
say
know. Yeah, I don't know.
that,
Even though I am that kind of person, I'm not sure exactly what made. I mean, I think it's a part of its conditions of growing up. Always being taught that I'm American, feeling American. I am American. When I live in Thailand for so long, I've become kind of famous in Thailand, actually. And people ask me, "Are you going to ever become like Thai?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm American." You know what I mean? I am just American. I'm always going to be. You know what I mean? I love Thailand and love Thai people I love Thai culture, and I'm American. You know what I mean? It's the
yeah,
same with Japan. In Japan, I've written 3 books that are only in Japanese. They're not in English. I wrote them in English, but they're on information war, right?
yeah,
And a lot of Japanese have said similar. And I'm like, I love Japan too. Japan's incredible. But I'm just American, and I'm not going to change. And I'm trying to change. I see other people that move overseas. Again, I've spent more than half my life in other countries, right? In more than 80 countries, but I've really lived a long time in Asia and Europe, 6 years in Europe. I've never wanted to become German. And ich spreche Deutsch. I speak German.
yeah.
Ich spreche fließend Deutsch. I speak German fluently. And I'm not German. I don't pretend to be. I don't want to be German. I love you, Germans. I'm not one of you, right? And so I've always felt that is my core, right? And um, and the military is well respected, especially in my community. It was then,
Yeah,
and
I think
so it was I always wanted to be a physicist, though. I always wanted to be a physicist. So ever since I was about 10, I
how
wanted
did
to be a
you go from
physicist.
physicist to Green Beret to combat
Uh,
course?
yeah, I know it. But I always wanted to be a physicist, and that's why I love space so much. When I meet these
Okay,
18 and 23-year-old, I'm like, well, that's me, man. I mean, so instead of me going off doing Green Beret stuff or in the 60s or running off to, smoking dope and being hippies or something, these guys are going off to space.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
was going off to military, right? But when I got out of the Army, that was when I went to school and started studying and preparing to study physics, right? Doing all the mathematics and all that stuff. And finally, I said, you know what? I'm not built for that. I'm action guy. I'm action Jackson. You know what I mean? I love physics. I love science. I can eat science books almost, right? I can't even imagine how many I've read since I was 10 years old. I was
mhm,
failing high school because all I wanted to read was physics, right? And then like basically like autistic on physics or something, you know what I mean? And so I love to talk physics still, but I'm not made for sitting around and being doing physics stuff. I'm made to go do something.
yeah,
And that's what I've been doing. That's why you see me on the trucker convoy or off in combat when I used to do years of combat stuff and tracking tigers. For a while, I tracked cannibals for a couple of years. That was a lot of funnest thing I've ever done in my life was cannibal
wait.
hunting.
Cannibals, where was that? Where were you tracking alright, let's
Uh,
okay, start with tigers and then go to cannibals. Tigers first.
did I ever show you my tiger photo? I showed it to
No.
my sister the other day. I haven't showed it to many people. I was cannibal hunting and I came. Oh, this tiger is unbelievable. It's in the wild and its eyes are glowing and it's unbelievable. It's a great shot. But I mean, there was no
Tiger.
cage. It
Where
was
where
in India.
where were you?
India.
Yeah, okay.
In India. Yeah, it was in the jungle. But
What
anyway, and the tiger's drinking water right in front of me, and it sees me too. It's drinking water, looking at me with its eyes, and I'm like, oh, it's like, you know, me versus that tiger. Odds are not in my favor. You know what I mean? But it was hot. Maybe it was just hunting, and then it turned around and it sat in the water, and it was breathing really hard it must have just killed something. I didn't see any blood on it or anything, but it was really hot, and it just got in the water and sat there and looked at me, like 2/3 of its body in the water, and just looked at me. And I was like, okay, this is pretty epic. Let's get out of
That's
here. It's like,
crazy.
and then so I can send you the photos. It's pretty
I've seen
wild.
hippos in the wild. I've never seen well, I've never been to India, so I've been in
Just
Africa.
straight up.
Yeah,
But
we've
I was hunting. I
been
was
on
hunting.
different continents. We have to compare.
I was hunting cannibals actually. And it was just more of a break from
Oh, so
action. You know
you
what I
were
mean?
hunting
And
cannibals and you happened to see a tiger that didn't eat you.
oh yeah, yeah. I'll send you the photo. It was
Okay.
unbelievable. I went
What?
hunting tigers one time and I never found one. I don't mean hunting with a rifle. I wasn't going to shoot one. I wouldn't shoot a tiger. But I mean, I went in Bangladesh. That was India, but I went in Bangladesh doing something similar. But I got some footprints. But yeah, I was hunting cannibals. I was hunting one in particular that I finally found. It took 6 months. He was from Houston. I call him GTC, Gary the Cannibal.
Okay, wait, wait,
And
wait.
he was,
Wait, hold on a second. You found a you were in India hunting a
yeah,
cannibal named Gary from Houston?
Gary Stevenson, Gary Rayburn Stevenson. He was born on December 3rd, 1950 in Houston. His dad was an Army officer, and his uncle died in an Air Force crash in Texas. And he grew up in Houston, and he was born in Houston. Gary was. His dad graduated from Texas A&M. I talked with his dad eventually after I found, but it took 6 months to find Gary, and I found him. I found him in India in a restaurant of all things. And I walked in. I was like, yeah, I've been
Wait, was
looking
it
for
a
six
cannibal
months.
restaurant?
No, no, it was called the Haifa Restaurant in
Okay.
Varanasi, India. Hmm. Called the Haifa Restaurant, like Haifa, Israel, but it was in India. So I walked in there, and there he was sitting at a table with a human skull on the table, and it was a Muslim restaurant, and called the Haifa Restaurant in Varanasi, India, which is a predominantly, obviously, Hindu city, but there's also Muslims and Christians there. I walked in, and there he was. And I was like, wow, I found him 6 months, and I interviewed him a lot. It was really epic. FBI got involved. It was really very interesting story.
All right.
But that was just a kind of a break.
Did you
Huh?
publish did you publish it anywhere?
Only bits and pieces. I've got thousands of photos of him and some of the other cannibals I hunted down, and and uh, oh, epic, epic. I got his daughter to take a DNA test, so that turns out that his whole family tree fleshed out. He and actually, oh, that's just that. We'll have to talk about that another time because we could talk about that for days.
Oh my
I
god.
mean, it's
Yeah.
it's the most amazing story ever.
I opened
Actually, even as an experienced war correspondent, this is just a lot more interesting than all the combat stuff ever was. It was
that
you haven't lived until you've gone cannibal hunting.
That's amazing. Yeah, because when you say cannibal hunting, I got to be honest. What I think of as cannibal hunting is like going out into the jungles of Papua New Guinea, and like hunting down like the headhunters. That's what because
Yeah,
I mean those are legit cannibals. But how somebody from America, grows up in Houston and becomes a cannibal, I'm just trying to get my head around
right.
that. That's yeah, I
Yeah.
can see how that would be a crazy, just unbelievable story. Um,
Oh yeah. It was epic. It was epic.
yeah,
And
whole series. That's like a
he
mini series. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was epic. I mean, I came across the cannibals by accident, and then I was like, wait a minute, is this real? And then after I confirmed that it was real, and then I started hearing stories about Americans and Italians involved and these sorts of things, and then I started hunting them down, and one by one I started finding them. It was very difficult and very dangerous, but I did find they drink out of human skulls, always from their left hand, like this with the three fingers and the thumb. I can There we go. If I can get it lined up, and they use human femur for a horn. They blow it like that, and they use the damaru that I'm trying to get the camera right. The little drum that you go dong 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 dong. They make those out of baby skulls and baby skin, and it's
that
called agor. Yeah,
that
their religion is called agor.
that
Agor.
that's
Yeah.
demonic. I mean,
Oh yeah, they're very dangerous, very dangerous. They're called
wow.
Agores. Aghor is the religion Agor, and the people that do it are called Agores. and many Americans have joined the cult. And so I tracked them down.
I
Yep.
I was gonna say, I think that, there's one of the things that we've uncovered, with some of these political elites, and we have to be careful about naming names, but that they're that they are part of this, that there's, an element, a pretty big element to some of these higher ups, that are engaging in this kind of behavior. And of course, you look at the abortion industry and that whole side of things, it's just pure, unabashed evil. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't want to go too deep into that, but it's just, I mean, absolutely, um, yeah, insane.
Yeah.
One thing I wanna
Yeah.
say about in the chat, people are asking about the earlier interview that I did with Clay Clark. I just put a link to that in the Facebook chat. You'll have to scroll down and find it, you guys. Um, so, wow, this is just an amazing conversation that we've had tonight. I
Yeah.
think that I wanna kinda end up, on a high note here because it's late at night. I want people to be able to sleep well.
Oh, wow. You're right. It's 10
Um,
o'clock, isn't it?
yeah,
Well,
it's
in
11
Texas.
o'clock here on the East Coast. In some, we've got people tuned in. I've got one listener here, at least one from South Africa.
Hello in South Africa.
Yeah, I encourage you guys to follow Michael on his locals channel, michaelyon.locals.com. It's up here on the screen. And I tell you, it's just it's there's no end of things that we could talk about. And at this point, so just give us a rundown. What's your plan? I know it's fluid, but where can people expect to hear from you next if they follow your locals channel? Those of you who are just here for the first time, this is Michael Yon. He's a combat correspondent. He is a United States veteran, Green Beret, Special Forces, and he is just he has some. His specialty is war and combat correspondence. He's been with us tonight, talking to us about an array of topics. If you're late getting here, I encourage you to go back and listen from the very beginning. This has just been a riveting conversation, and we're so grateful for the time that you've had with us tonight. How can people keep it? I mean, that we know about the locals channel, but what's next? What's your next steps?
Kyle Bass invited me to something next week or a few days from now. What's today? Today's the 5th. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 4 days, I'm going to go to a it's a sort of shooting roundup for skeet shooting and stuff up near Dallas. So I'm
Oh,
going to go to that, and then I'll go down to Darien Gap to do a reconnaissance, to bring some people down. You're welcome to go. I think I already told you, and I'll go down and do a reconnaissance to bring.
yeah. I
I want to bring some congressmen want to go back to Darien Gap. I took two congressmen down there. Chuck Holton and I took two down.
yeah.
And this time I'm going to take a few more. You're welcome to go. Tom Tiffany wants to go, congressman
know.
from Wisconsin, and others.
I, I've got a lot on my plate right now, but I might just turn up down there. So we'll
I mean,
see.
it's not quite like cannibal hunting. I mean, that's just straight outright fun.
Yeah.
A Darien Gap is high adventure and highly educational. And
Yeah.
it's fun, but it's really work. It's work because we're being invaded.
Yeah.
And but the cannibal hunting was just recreational.
No, I understand. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, we've talked. I've been in Africa. I've been in Latin America. I've been in, pretty off the beaten path kind of places. I've seen a lot of crazy things.
Yeah.
A lot of it on my own. But guys, don't try this at home. The kind of
No,
place,
don't do that.
kind of things you don't tell
Don't
your
do that.
you don't tell your mom about even as an
Yeah.
adult, right? So,
Don't go cannibal hunting, and that's quite dangerous. That's
although
like wartime level dangerous.
to be
Yeah.
honest, the most danger I've ever sensed in my lifetime has been right here in America.
Oh
And
yeah, it's
numerous occasions. Yeah, but I'm very well protected. I have the angels of God around me. So if he sends me, he's going to protect me. I know that. I know I'm going to live a long life. So I may I may just turn up down there with my bag and whatever else I need to bring. If not this time, next time. I think I know there will be a next time. But okay, so I think this is good. We're coming to a good stopping point here. Everybody, thank you so much for being here in the show. Thank you to everybody who has participated in the chat. And thank you to everybody for sharing and for helping our channels grow, my channel grow here. Just, come back. I know for sure I'll be here Thursday. I'm interviewing Liz Yor on my channel at 1 p.m. Eastern on all of my channels. And that's going to be unbelievably enlightening and educational. So thanks again, Michael. We will have you back as soon as you're ready. It's been wonderful, and everybody have a good night. Make sure you follow Mary Grace Media and Michael Yan on locals.com.